In today's analysis, we're going to unpack a case that will quite literally fundamentally change how you view truth, evidence, and the reality of our digital world. We are looking at a chilling locked room mystery that completely baffled investigators for over a decade. And the wildest part? It's a story where the single most damning piece of evidence wasn't a bloody weapon or a stray fingerprint. It was something entirely invisible.
Just imagine this playing out in a perfectly quiet room. A faint, low whisper from a woman. She says, "You won't tell anyone this." And then, immediately, a man's voice repeats the exact same words, "You won't tell anyone this." And then, a heavy, violent thud. Just total silence after that. Well, that audio clip is exactly what we're going to dissect today.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Part 1, the 11-second audio.
So, picture this. 14 years ago, a woman named Emily Parker was found dead in her apartment at exactly 11:17 p.m. And the crime scene? It was the absolute definition of an impossible puzzle. The door was locked tight from the inside, the windows were completely shut, there was literally no sign of forced entry anywhere, yet she had suffered fatal blunt force trauma to the back of her head. And right beside her lay the only clue, a small digital voice recorder. When investigators pressed play on that little device, they found just one single file. It was exactly 11 seconds long. But man, it was 11 seconds of an absolute sensory nightmare. You hear Emily's low, terrified voice, right? Then this unidentified male voice echoing her plea, and finally that sickening sound of impact. There was no context, no other voices. Just 11 seconds that would end up sealing a man's fate for over a decade.
So the crucial point is how this moves to part 2, wrongful trial and a 14-year injustice.
Investigators quickly locked onto a target, James Carter. He was Emily's business partner, and they'd been locked in a pretty bitter dispute. And the circumstantial evidence, it stacked up perfectly against him in 3 steps. First, police found out Emily had discovered some shady financial irregularities in their company. Second, a threatening email was sent from Emily's computer to James saying, "I will tell the police everything tomorrow." And third, cell tower records showed James's phone pinging uncomfortably close to Emily's apartment on the exact night of the murder.
In court, the prosecution delivered this damning accusation, forcefully. He killed her to hide the financial irregularities. They argued James was just absolutely desperate to hide his embezzlement. But you know what? The real star witness wasn't even a person. It was that audio playback. The jury sat in absolute stunned silence as those 11 seconds were played. To them, it felt like they were listening to a murder happen in real time. It was, without a doubt, the undeniable final nail in the coffin.
But let's contrast the prosecution's narrative with James's desperate plea. From his very first interrogation straight through to his final day in court, his defense never changed, not once. He looked right at the jury and said, "That is not my voice." But with all that circumstantial evidence surrounding him, no one believed him, not a single person. He was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison.
1 year turned into 5, then 10, and then 14 long years. 14 years. James lost a massive chunk of his life sitting in a prison cell. But while he was sitting there, the outside world was changing. External technology, digital forensics, acoustic analysis, all of it was evolving at lightning speed. Which brings us to part 3. A new truth emerges after 14 years. Let's introduce Nora Bennett, a brilliant young lawyer who was reviewing old wrongful conviction cases. She zeroed right in on James's file. Something about that 11-second audio just kind of rubbed her the wrong way. It didn't sit right. So, in an absolute game-changing move, she decided to pull the audio file out of the archives and send it over to modern, state-of-the-art acoustic experts.
3 weeks later, the report comes back, and the twist is just shocking. The acoustic expert conclusively stated 2 things. First, the male voice was definitively 100% not James Carter. And second, the audio file was absolutely littered with unusual, microscopic editing marks. It wasn't even a continuous recording. Armed with this explosive report, Nora went straight to a judge, the evidence was thrown out, and after 14 agonizing years, James finally walked free.
Now, what's really interesting about this is part 4. The train horn and the real mystery. Because as James stepped out of prison, he left reporters with one massive, burning question. If he didn't do it, and the audio was manipulated, who actually constructed this elaborate trap?
Well, investigators reopened the case and went right back to that audio expert.
digging deep, deep into the background noise, like way beneath the voices and that heavy thud, the expert isolated some deeply hidden auditory anomalies. Faintly buried in the mix, they found the sound of a train horn and this incredibly distant, muffled station announcement saying, "Next train on platform 3." But here is where the killer's narrative completely, brilliantly falls apart. Emily's apartment was near some train tracks, so investigators pulled the 14-year-old railway schedule. The recorded time of the murder was exactly 11:17 p.m. But the actual train schedule? It showed trains running at 10:43 p.m. and 11:58 p.m. There was no train at 11:17 p.m., meaning a train horn at that exact minute was physically impossible.
And the horrifying realization didn't even stop there. By enhancing that really distant platform announcement, they traced it back to a specific day. That announcement actually occurred 2 full days before the murder, meaning the entire 11-second audio clip wasn't just lightly edited. The whole shebang was completely fabricated, spliced together using old background noises to create a totally fake timeline.
Part 5. David's Perfect Trap. This leads us straight to the real mastermind, David Ross. He was the IT consultant for Emily and James's company. Curiously, investigators found out that he had abruptly quit his job, citing quote-unquote personal reasons, just 1 single week before Emily was brutally murdered.
And here is David's true motive. Remember those financial irregularities James was blamed for? Yeah, James didn't make those. David did. David was the one embezzling money by creating fake transactions in the IT system. And Emily? She had caught him red-handed. Just 2 days before her death, she sent David an email with a really chilling warning, "I know everything." So how exactly did David execute his terrifyingly perfect digital frame-up? Well, police eventually tracked him down. He was actually living under a totally new identity, and on a hidden hard drive, they found a folder simply named James. Here was his playbook. Step 1, he harvested James's voice from old company videos and recordings. Step 2, he meticulously spliced those specific words together, layering them over old background noise he'd secretly recorded from Emily's apartment. And Step 3, he used his IT expertise to hack the company network, sending fake emails and spoofing James's phone location so it would ping near the crime scene.
His digital illusion was perfect. Really, it was. But he made physical mistakes. Investigators dug up a 14-year-old car repair record for David's vehicle, and it showed undeniable physical evidence. On the very night of the murder, David drove 80 miles. And even more damning, a service receipt noted that incredibly strong chemicals had been used to remove blood stains from his car's trunk. The actual physical act of murder finally tied him directly to the crime.
And this brilliantly illustrates Part 6, Lost Time and the Final Lesson. Presented with that undeniable combination of his fabricated audio layers and the physical car records, David had absolutely no defense left. He was convicted for the murder he committed and for the elaborate framing of an innocent man. But despite the conviction, the human cost of this crime remains absolutely devastating. When reporters asked James outside the courthouse how it felt to finally see the truth proven after 14 years, he looked up and delivered this heartbreaking quote, "Truth came late, but my 14 years will never return." It just completely anchors you to the immeasurable tragedy of manipulated evidence.
I want to leave you with this final thought. The most terrifying part of this entire mystery wasn't just a brutal act of violence in a perfectly locked room. It was that our entire justice system relied on something completely invisible. You know, sometimes the most dangerous evidence is what seems unquestionably real to our own ears, but actually never happened at all.